Hi, my name is Angel de Guzman. My life started here in the United States when I joined the United States Navy in August 2nd, 1968. I was 22 years old, young, ambitious. So I met my wife after I finished my training in San Diego. She was in New Jersey when I met her. The roommate was a sister of my friend when I was in training, so that was the first time I met her. We started communicating, and after like a year, a year and a half, we got married. So we used to live in the Bronx, living in an apartment, just starting a new life, married. And then after a year, we had our first child, a girl, and we were so excited. But because the Navy life is a little harder, you're always away, so I decided that once I finish my term, I'm planning to get out of the United States Navy and plan to probably go back to school. We had a good life, during that time. We enjoy our, weekend. I used to work 2 jobs and take care of the baby while my wife was working. And then when my term was done in the United States Navy, I got out and I went back to school. I went to College of Staten Island. I majored in nursing, and fortunately I was able to finish, and I was able to pass the board, and I became a registered nurse. When I became a registered nurse, my dream as a male nurse is to become an emergency room nurse. I did a lot of training, going with the ambulance and doing some skills on ER and whatever. But when I was talking to one of the ambulance driver, I was told that I should have some skills on mental health, because most of the people that enter in emergency rooms are mentally unstable. So I did start learning that. And then when I got my license, I was offered by the state of New York to work in a state hospital, which is a mental health psychiatric unit. So because I need some experience, I accepted the job, and I ended up becoming a psychiatric nurse. And I was not even thinking about that will be my profession, but since then, since graduation, that's all I did, to help people with mental illness and substance abuse. Finally, when my kids were growing up, we moved to Staten Island, New York. We were able to buy a house there. My children were going to Catholic schools. It was a good family life, and when they started growing up, I decided to move to a little bit more peaceful place, which is Virginia Beach. And that's how I ended here in Virginia Beach. But because military really helped me a lot, I decided to go back to the military in the Army Reserve as an officer, because I'm already a registered nurse. So I became an Army nurse, and I served 24 years. But before I became an officer, I served also in the Vietnam War in 1972 when I was in the Navy. Everything is doing okay. Family is doing okay. We're happy. We have a nice place here in Virginia Beach until COVID struck. Now, when COVID strikes, everybody's in a panic, especially us who works directly with patients. My wife is a nurse. My daughter is also a nurse. So we're kind of concerned about it, because nobody really is giving us the right story where this virus is coming from and how does it affect us. So there's a lot of changes at work, protocols. You wash your hands all the time, wear masks, sometimes shields, and when you come home, make sure you clean so you don't contaminate the house or whatever, so you don't get the virus. So there was a lot of adjustment during the time. I was not expecting. I was just watching the news, listening to what they tell us, CDC, whatever the Department of Health is giving us, whatever information, and we just base it from that. and nobody really can tell us exactly where COVID is coming from and how it affect your body. We're just expecting that soon they will find something that will probably help control this virus. And they are on the work of vaccine. You know, it's chaos on the news. Politicians are killing each other, arguing on what to do. So it's kind of very disappointing, because as health providers, we are kind of lost. We don't know what to follow or whatever. Even CDC is kind of up in the air. They don't have much information about this virus. But I was the president of the Philippine Nurses Association during the time, so I kind of more aggressive of trying to find out what really is the virus, so I can share that with the members and also their families. So I was communicating with the CDC, I was talking to the health department, trying to find some information, but everybody is telling me different things. So nobody really knows what happened and what we need to do. The only thing that we know, we have to wash our hands and we have to wear masks all the time. So that's what we did until one day we have a little gathering in my house. Me, my daughter, who is also a nurse, my son and my wife, we were talking, and then my son all of a sudden told us that he's having symptoms of cold symptoms and scratchy throat and kind of a little runny nose. So we decided, hey, why don't you go to a clinic, and get tested for it. We weren't expecting that he's going to be positive. When he get there, he texts us and he mentioned that he was tested positive. So all of us decided to go to the same clinic and got tested, and here we are. All of us were positive for COVID. My daughter and my son have minimal symptoms. I still have minimal symptoms during the time, but we were instructed to just stay home and quarantine. That was given to us by the doctor. They didn't prescribe us anything, because I guess they really don't know what to prescribe you. So we were able to go home and stay home. But what really happened after that is terribly devastating, because the following day I was already in pretty bad shape and I can't breathe. So what I did is I told my son or my wife to call 911. And they called 911, and I was transported by the ambulance to the emergency room. And when I got into the emergency room, I was like shocked, because the place was like a war zone. I mean, people are everywhere. There was so commotions, noise, and whatever. People are just crying and whatever. I couldn't believe it. But I went straight to a room, and I was treated right away because I was brought by the ambulance. So I was given oxygen, and then finally later on I was admitted. But during the time, my wife didn't call 911. What she did is she went to the emergency room because she was having difficulty breathing. And it took her around 9 hours before she was admitted. So we were both admitted at the same time at the COVID unit at the same hospital. And we were communicating through computers, trying to find out how she's doing, how am I doing, and whatever. But to make the story short, after like 3 or 4 days, I was in pretty bad shape. My oxygen level went down to 80, and I had a meeting with the pulmonologist and the respiratory therapist, and they increased the maximum oxygen that I can get every day. My wife was very concerned. I lost the sense of smell. I lost the sense of taste, and I lost a lot of strength and energy, and also I was bleeding internally. That's what I was told, because my stool was black. I mean, I can tell that I was bleeding internally. So I was expecting that this is it. This could be my time, and I pray to God that please, spare my wife, because we have great grandchildren, and my kids are really depending on her. So my hope is, please take me instead of her, if that comes with that. That was my last prayer to God, that because I was about to be intubated during the time. Now, as a nurse, during my stay in the hospital, even though I can't breathe, I tried to get out of bed, because as a nurse, we always say to our patients, you have to move, you have to be mobilized, you can't stay in bed because you're not going to get better. So I tried to ambulate a few steps, even though my oxygen level dropped to 80. The nurses will be running to my room, and I told them I'm just trying to get out of bed. They said, don't get up because you're still weak and whatever. But I was forcing myself, and I was also drinking a lot of fluids during the time. And also eating. I asked for food every 30, 25 minutes. So I tried to eat. I said, why? I'm gonna die anyway. That's what I was thinking. But things changed. After 24 hours, I was about to be intubated. My condition changed so sudden. My condition started getting better, and my oxygen level started to improve. And respiratory therapists came to my room a couple of times, and they said, we're gonna decrease your oxygen level because your oxygen level is getting a lot better. So I said, well, that's good. So I was telling my wife that they're gonna decrease my oxygen level, and I asked her how's she doing. She says she's doing okay. Now, my goal during the time is, if my wife is doing okay, I will try to get better as soon as possible, so when she gets home, I'll be able to take care of her. The following day, my condition improved, so the doctor said, wow, you're really improving. We probably have to discontinue your oxygen. This is within 48 hours. I said, really? I said, yeah. Your lungs is really responding well. I said, wow, that's good. And I was told that if I continue to do well, they will discharge me. I told my wife that I will probably going to be discharged within a day or two, and I hope to see her when she gets home. She said, okay. I said, are you doing okay? She said, yeah, I'm okay, but my oxygen level was still a little high. That's what she told me. So finally, I was transported by the ambulance to my home by myself, but my kids was able to stay with me while I was recovering here at home. And the aftercare recommendation is for me to have home health, to do physical therapy and occupational therapy, because I lost 23 to 24 pounds in a couple of weeks. So that's a lot of weight. And plus, my balance was really off. I can't even stand, so I was using a cane. They gave me a walker and oxygen when I got home. And the physical therapist, the nurse, the aide was able to visit me 5 times a week. And physical therapy continues for about, I think, 6 months before I was able to do anything. This is the place where I sit for 6 months. I didn't do anything. I was very depressed. I couldn't believe this is happening. When I was getting better physically, my wife was still in the hospital, and we were communicating with the doctor every day virtually, trying to find out the update prognosis of my wife. And then one day, the doctor told us that my wife was not really responding with the treatment. Now, when the doctor told us that my wife was not responding to the treatment, it's very difficult for us to accept that. What do you mean she's not responding to the treatment? And the pulmonologist said that her lungs already collapsed, and they were not able to get it back to normal. And there's a possibility that they will probably discontinue the treatment because she's just breathing through a respirator. And that was really hard to accept during the time. It's a lot of things in my mind. I was thinking about, I'm not going to see her anymore because I know when people died from COVID, they're going to cremate them and you're not going to be able to see your family, because that's all I see on television. I asked my daughter, you think I should ask the doctor if we were able to see her, if she passed, are we going to be able to bury her or things like that. It's a lot of questions. Or is there any possibility of lungs transplant or whatever? We're trying to negotiate with the doctor during our virtual meeting with the doctor. The hospital were able to let us visit her for 2 to 3 hours in ICU, and we stayed there for that long watching her while she was in the respirator, and then the doctor said we will discontinue the treatment around 11:30 p.m. So I decided to take my son home and let my daughter stay with her, because I don't really know what will happen once they discontinue treatment. Me and my son got home. I was still very weak, I was using a cane. I can't even have difficulty breathing. So we got home. As soon as we got home, my daughter texted us and told us that she passed. And that time it was kind of a shock, and we don't really know where to start again. My son started crying, and I can't even move. I was paralyzed. And I don't really know what's next. Thank God my daughter was able to handle everything at the hospital, I was told. But the good thing is I have a few friends, which is probably a number of them are like maybe 12 or 13 people that got together. I didn't even know they did this on their own. They had a meeting, and their goal is to help me out recover. So those people were able to help me. They deliver me food every day. They live in at the front door. They will tell me, they will text me the food is at the front door. And that's how I survived. They were really nice, and they're the one who really able to help me to arrange the burial of my wife and the arrangement. They curated all the flowers. They told me what I need to do, and they took care of everything. Now, the funeral services. That's one thing that we never really experienced. I mean, this is the first time I lost a loved one, a wife, so I don't really know where to start. My daughter, because when we were at the hospital, we signed a power of attorney for her to take care of everything, because just in case something happened to us. So she is the one who's in charge of all the financial. I was told that she'll take care of everything. So we went to the funeral home. We didn't see my wife yet, and I was told that I will be able to see her. We will able to provide services for her, which is one of the best news I ever heard since she passed away, because I know a lot of people were not able to see their families when they died from COVID. I guess the state of Virginia have changed the law that you will be able to have services for the loved ones if they die from COVID. That was one of the best news during that time. We went to the funeral home, made arrangement, and we also made arrangement to have a video so that people from different parts of the world can see funeral services and also the after burial of my wife. So that was really, really great for us to be able to share everything with our relatives in the Philippines, and also friends and families around the United States and around the world. and they were very informative when that was done. I have a good friend who did the video, and I received a lot of good feedback after the funeral. Now, after the funeral, what happened now? I got home. What do I do now? Who's going to take care of everything? Who's going to take care of the bills, financial, mortgage, insurance, car payments, electricity, cable, telephone, my mind was really spinning, and when the bills started coming in, and they would say, you're late 2-3 months or whatever, I was just not paying attention to it because I don't really care. Now remember, I'm a psychiatric nurse. This is all I did all my life, help people recover. And I thought I was recovering. But all I did was sit in this couch right here, watch TV until 3 o'clock in the morning, eat late, and then wake up in the afternoon. I did that for several months until my friends that I mentioned, the 12 people that get together, were calling me almost every day, asking me how you're doing, what we can do for you. They are really great. Without that support, I probably will not make it. Because when my wife died, most of the inheritance were given to my children. And we talked about that when she was still healthy, that I don't really mind her giving everything to our children because I'm pretty much secured with my pension, but I didn't know the bills was beyond my pension. I didn't say much because that's my responsibility. I promised that. I know I was struggling. I was looking for help somewhere else, but there was none available that I can even reach out. They have FEMA, I was told, but they were asking you your whole history. It would probably take you 6 months to fill up the applications and whatever. So I don't have that time. I was really very, very depressed that I didn't even know. I was able to get some services and help from the community by just talking, and also because I'm a veteran, I was able to get services from the Veterans Administration, and I did therapy for quite a while through virtual. Finally, after a few months, I was able to see a psychiatrist. Definitely, I was suffering from severe depression. Now, so my saga continues. It's still not over. I've been struggling financially. I am in the process of selling everything that I own, because before my wife passed away, we were able to have a house built in the Philippines because we were planning to retire there, after like a year. So the house is brand new, so I was just thinking sell everything and then probably move there maybe permanently. So that was my plan. But my children are still here, and also my grandchildren. What is it now for me? What is my life now? My life? People are telling me you can't sit there forever, you need to move on, you're gonna do something, you need to go out, you need to meet people. But that time, there's a lot of disappointment, anger, because when my wife died, those people that I was expecting to be there weren't there. I was a very, very active person in the community. I helped a lot of people. I volunteered, I did a lot of services, so I have a lot of friends. So when my wife died, I was expecting that I might not have room at the funeral services because I know I have a lot of friends. But that's not what happened. Yes, I have enough people that came, but not the people I was expecting to be there. I know it's COVID. People are scared to go to funerals, and I understand that. But I'm not angry at them, but I'm just telling you how I feel during the time. I didn't say, I'm not going to talk to them or anything, that didn't happen. But that could happen to you. You don't really know will happen until the time comes that you lose someone and you don't really know who's going to show up. You can't say, hey, I'll have a lot of people will come because I know a lot of people in the community. Not during this time. So, watching TV, talking to people, waiting for maybe something will happen, maybe help or whatever from some organization, but I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything from any organization that, hey, how you doing? What can I do for you? What can we do for you? How can I help you? I watch the television and say, let's give medal to these frontliners. They are our heroes. Yeah, sure. That's not enough. I mean, I'm dying here, you know. I'm devastated. I'm severely depressed. I'm financially in big trouble. My family, I don't even know where they are because they all disappeared. No, they're all grieving, you know, I know they have their own family. I'm alone. My children, they're on their own. We barely talk now because my wife is really the key of our family. She is the one who really supported everyone. She is the one who really managed everything to make sure everybody's okay. Now that she's gone, it's totally different now. So it's not only the loss of my wife, it's not only the loss of my friends, but it's also the loss of your family who is around you. Now, what about me? How am I doing? Am I recovering from COVID? I don't know. When I got out of the hospital, I asked the doctor, shall I get the second shot? Because let me just go back a little bit. I was the president of the Philippine Nurses Association of Virginia, and my term was ending during that time. So smartly, I volunteered at the health department to be a vaccinator before the vaccine was available, thinking that when the vaccine is available and we are the vaccinator, I'm pretty sure I'll get the first vaccine. And that's what happened. So I got the first vaccine from the health department on December 28th, and I was so lucky, and I said, wow, it did work. My plan really worked. So I was a volunteer, but I didn't know that during that time, from that time that you got your vaccine, between 2 to 3 weeks, you are more vulnerable of getting the virus. I didn't know that. So that's how probably I got exposed to this virus. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the only thing I can think of. And now, am I recovered from it? I don't know. Physically, probably not. Mentally, I don't think so. I think it will stay in my head forever. I mean, what happened to me will not be forgotten. Even now, my life is changed. I don't know what's gonna happen next. Now, let me just share this one thing that God said there's always a reason why they spare you, why you survive, and why your wife didn't make it. Maybe your wife need a break or whatever because she was a hard-working person. Maybe it's time for me to do the part of what she left for me. So I'm trying to think a little positive. So I started going out, meet people. As a nurse, I was trying to call everyone, the members who were affected by COVID, and I was calling them, how you doing? Until I talked to a member whose husband lost from COVID. I was communicating with her. I said, are you doing okay? Trying to support her. She got 2 beautiful children, young, still young. She moved out of state. She moved to California, and I started communicating with her until we feel a little bit more comfortable with each other. This is a true story. I need to share this with everyone because when I said God really do a mysterious ways in his life is her husband died of COVID. And her husband's birthday It's the same birthday that I have. We have the same birthday. Number two, he went to the same school where I went in the Philippines with the same major. He was majoring of advertising fine arts in the University of Santo Tomas. The two of us. And guess what? The third one, I couldn't believe it. When I was the president, my motto, my main goal is to send a message to the people that this is what a wonderful world. If you check my record as president of the Philippine Nurses Association of Virginia, that is the main thing that I'm representing, because what a wonderful world is a message of hope, helping each other, loving each other. And that was his favorite song. This is before we started communicating and started liking each other. And the other thing is, they are also planning to go back home to the Philippines and retire there. They had a house built there, like us, brand new, so that they could move there the following year. Like us, we were planning the same way. So we started communicating until we started talking for too long, like an hour, 2 hours or whatever, until we decided that let's meet. We decided to meet in the Philippines. I flew first to the Philippines, and then we met in the Philippines. Now we're together. Our plan is to move on. We're supporting each other, hoping that maybe in the future we can be tied together. But with that, my life changed. I gotten a lot better, because you always take care of, make sure I eat, I take my vitamins. And because you still have 2 kids that are young, 18, 26, her daughter is also a nurse. We were like, and I missed that part being a father. I was able to guide the children, her children, and I was able to help her, and she was able to help me. This is not me. If you see me maybe 4 months ago, this is not me. I don't take care of myself, I was totally don't want to go out, I don't want to talk to people. And this is my line of work I do. I was grieving really bad. I'm still grieving. But the hardest part is, how do I move on? What will happen to 51 years of marriage? The pictures, the memories, you name it, things like that. It's really difficult. What am I going to do now? Sell the house? What will happen next? So there's a lot of questions, but the main thing is, what will happen to me because of this COVID? What is the after effect of COVID? What is the post-COVID syndrome? Until now, they don't really know what really going to happen to you, because I still have symptoms. I still have some forgetfulness. I know I'm 75, but I'm not really that forgetting things. You never know. But this could happen. Physically, it affects you. Mentally, it'll drain you. You're not back to 100%. This is one of the reasons why I want to share this story, because I know I'm not the only one suffering from this disease. And I hope people will realize that this could happen to anyone. I am one of the lucky one that I was able to provide funeral services for my wife. I was able to bury her in a nice way. Some other people that I've heard, they never seen their mom and sisters. They were cremated and they give you this big jar of dust, and that's all happened. My fiancée now, when her husband died, I think he was cremated. I can say my family was really lucky to be able to do that. What is the future? What's going to happen now? Nobody really knows. I don't hear anything more in the news about what happened to those people that are suffered from COVID. What about those health frontliners? What will happen to them? They are forgotten. Look how I ended. Am I happy? Yes, I'm happy, but I'm still struggling, but I'm looking forward. The other difficult part is getting rid of all the things that you saved all these years. I'm thinking about what am I going to do today? That's how I put my life now. How can I survive today? When I wake up tomorrow morning, that's another day. I'm not thinking about bills. What are you going to do? Put me in jail? I work with them. Once I sell my house, everything will be paid off.
Hello, my name is Madelyn and my family comes from Iloilo, Philippines. I'm one of 13 siblings, and I grew up with my grandparents. Because there were so many of us in the family, my grandfather and grandmother took me and my two brothers in and mentored us until we grew up. And I'm very thankful of that fact. So I was able to qualify for a scholarship at UP Iloilo, where I finished with no tuition, no books that I paid, and just to study, which my grandfather instilled in me. He was a school principal, and my grandmother was a school teacher. So to us and to them, education was very important. After high school, I didn't know what to do for college, but I do know, as my grandfather has always told me, that education was the answer to everything. So at first I enrolled at AB English, only because I love English literature. But then again, I was thinking to myself, I would become a teacher. Not that there's nothing wrong with being a teacher. They're honorable and they mold the minds of children. But then in the Philippines, the salary may not be enough for me to follow my dreams of having a family of my own and grow up comfortably and become good citizens. So when a group of my friends enrolled in nursing, I did enroll in nursing too. And that's when my nursing journey started. I also qualified for the scholarship at UP PGH School of Nursing. It was a very coveted position. There were 5,000 candidates throughout the Philippines, and they accepted 75 of us. So most of my classmates came from Holoto, Apari, and come from great universities and schools. But this scholarship was really meant for indigent students who are bright and have a promising future. And I'm really lucky to qualify for that program because I finished college without spending any money for tuition or books or uniforms. So I am very grateful to the University of the Philippines for having this kind of program. So I became a nurse, and with my training, I started to work at the Philippine General Hospital and practice my skills in nursing. I met my husband when I was still a student in nursing, and he was a student of mechanical engineering in Mapua. So we dated, and we got married, and we started to have children. So when we had one child, I was thinking to myself, with the salary of a nurse and with his salary at work, we can answer our daily needs, but what about the future? What about our children's future? How would we be able to send them to college, finance their education, and probably their other dreams too? So we were okay already. We are all college graduates and we have our work, but now we are thinking of our expanded family. So that's when I thought of probably going to the United States. In 1986, the Philippines was experiencing turmoil in the political arena. The people were demonstrating against President Ferdinand Marcos and his dictator ways, and we went to the streets. I was part of those who went to the streets to protest against this kind of rule. And the people won, and we elected Cory Aquino as the new president. Because of the social, political climate in the Philippines, we decided to immigrate to the United States. In my mind, and we discussed this with my husband, it will be a better future for our children. And so we did. So in 1978, I first went to Kansas City, Missouri, by myself. We already had one child, and I just couldn't take the homesickness away. I was going home every 6 months. So there was no way of saving any money for the family. So I stayed in the Philippines for a little bit, maybe 3 years, and I worked at the Philippine Heart Center for Asia. Because of my training and because of my short experience in the US, I became the nurse manager of the medical ICU at the Philippine Heart Center. This trained me, this added to my critical care skills as a nurse. So in 1986, we decided to immigrate to the family, the whole family. In those days, we were recruited as nurses here in the US because of the shortage of nurses in the United States. The Filipinos were trained and we could speak English, and our books were American standards, so it was easy for us to adjust to life in the United States. In 1986, I became an immigrant, and I petitioned for my family to follow me here in the United States. So they all came. My husband and the 4 children came to New Jersey, where I stayed. I love the climate. There's 4 seasons. There's mild winters, and the summers were not as harsh compared to Missouri. So that's where we settled. And that's how we started our life in the United States. I was climbing the ladder, so to speak, as a nursing professional. I became a charge nurse, a preceptor, a nurse manager, and a nursing director of the critical care areas. My favorite experience are in the open heart area. So I focused a lot on cardiac care. You could say I'm an expert in cardiac nursing. So my husband was also employed. He was a mechanical engineer back home, and he focused on heating and ventilation and worked at the post office here in the United States. And my children were all going to the public schools in Union. So our American dream started to form, and it started to become real. Now my children are grown up, and they are very good citizens. They are responsible adults. So I thank my husband and I for forming their minds and making sure that we role model for them with respect, with the love of God and the love of your fellow men, to be respectful citizens. So that's how my life was prior to COVID. I also volunteered as part of the Philippine Nurses Association of New Jersey, because now I believe my family is stable, the kids are growing up, my husband and I were providing for them. They're all in college, some have graduated college, some have started to have families of their own. I was elected to be the national president of the Philippine Nurses Association of America after having been the president in New Jersey and many other community organizations like the Bayanihan in Union, the Association of Philippine Societies in New Jersey. I also was president of the University of the Philippines Alumni Association in New Jersey. In my mind, I needed to give back with all the blessings that I received from the University of the Philippines, and for everybody nurturing me to become this responsible person that I am now today. So that's where the thought of advocacy came to my mind and formulated in my mind that this is gonna be my life's work. I'm here to advocate for my fellow nurses. I'm here to make sure that their experiences in the United States are free of any experiences that would put them at a disadvantage, because we heard of nurses who were being taken advantage of by recruiters or some employers. So we had a happy life here in Union, New Jersey. The children were great, my husband was great. I had a promising profession that was keeping us afloat, and the children were realizing their dreams of whatever schooling they would like to enroll in college. So life was good. And 2020 was a very good year that we were expecting. I was going to wrap up my presidency with the Philippine Nurses Association of America. We were preparing to host the international conference in Boracay, Philippines, and we were all getting ready to show what the Philippine Nurses Association of America can do for nurses in the US and for nurses in the Philippines, because we had that collaboration. Before we got home to the Philippines, the Taal volcano erupted. So we were scared to go home because we didn't mean if our planes can land, if the ashes are falling not just in Manila or anywhere else that could affect us. So we brought home some N95 masks. Little did I know that I would need those masks for other reasons. So the convention in the Philippines happened. It was a great conference attended by 400 nurses from the US and from the Philippines, and there was a lot of interchange of great ideas for a global summit and update on conferences. And then we started to hear of the COVID virus that started in China, they said. They were telling us it's very infectious, it's airborne, it could be spread anywhere, and that we have to be ready. So we were in Boracay wrapping up the international convention, and we are going to go to different provinces to continue missions, because many of the nurses are involved in doing medical and surgical missions or going back to their hometown for reunions in college or in high school. That's where we were when we first heard of COVID. So I came home and went to another state. This time it was Atlanta, Georgia, to induct a new group of officers. Now at this point, the news of the COVID starting to spread in other countries was getting stronger. We were now asked to mask up, to social distance, and wash our hands frequently, which we did. As healthcare professionals, we are proponents of such measures. We tell people what to do to avoid to get infected. So I came back from Georgia March 8th of 2020, and that was the last official function that I did. After March 8th, everything locked down. San Francisco was locked down. New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut were the hot spots for the COVID infections because we had the international airports. We had 3 big international airports here in the East, and we have travelers from all over the world. There was no lockdown on travel yet. So we started to hear of nurses starting to get sick. When the time you have to change your gloves or your mask, you open yourself to the possibility that now you open yourself to the air and that you could get the infection. So a lot of nurses were troubled. They started to call me and the officers of the Philippine Nurses Association to tell us what was going on. So the first infections that I heard were from New York, from nurses who had no PPEs at this time. They had no complete protection. They might have masks, they might have gloves, but they don't have the whole gear. So we started to think of how we could support the nurses all over. We started to assign the chapter presidents to report to us who's getting sick. Is there somebody who died? And we heard the first death was from a nurse who was the assistant nurse manager of one of our members, and he was young. He was only in his 30s, and it scared us all. Then I started to hear that nurses in New Jersey were also starting to get sick. One of the good nurses, that a good friend of mine, called me to say, I have these symptoms. And then we heard from TV that these are the classic symptoms. You know, you have fever, there's loss of taste, your lungs are attacked, your oxygen saturation is down, people get sick, and now the hospitals are starting to see patients. And hospitals are starting to get overcrowded with patients. It started to scare us. It started to scare me because I was afraid for myself, my own family, and the organization that I'm taking care of. I am in charge of all of them. What do I do now to protect them? So our first project was, of course, the mask project, which we had sent out to 4,000 plus of our members. Very good souls prepared masks for us. We obtained masks. We tried to write Congress for PPEs. We tried to lobby for the needs of the nurses through every means that we could, because now it's a nationwide crisis. Then we started to hear people dying. In my town here in Union, New Jersey, I knew of 10 people that were personally known to me who died. But we thought we were very careful. As a nurse, I was observing everything that should prevent us from getting sick. So we were carrying on with our lives. I was already retired in 2019, but my husband was still going to work every day. So he would wear a mask, or he would do the groceries for us early in the morning, because at that time, the seniors were allowed to go to grocery first thing in the morning to avoid the crowd. And then we would clean up all the groceries, wipe them down, and then we would wash our hands all the time. We were proponents of making sure that we don't get infected. So we carried on with our lives, but now we cannot even socialize with anybody. Lockdown means you don't go visiting anybody, not even your family. So we started FaceTiming with my children. Every Sunday we go to church. My husband and I hear the 12 noon mass. We come home, we have lunch, we watch TV, and usually he falls and dozes off in the den, and while I chat with our children. So one Sunday while we were doing that, the children said, "Mom, Daddy doesn't look good." And I told them, "What do you mean he doesn't look good? I'm just chatting with him here." But I saw that he was dozing off, which he usually does every Sunday. So the children were insistent, "Mom, he doesn't look good." So whatever they were seeing in their FaceTiming did not look right to them. And they called 911. I started to wake my husband up, and I couldn't wake him up. I couldn't wake him up from his dozing. He was obtunded. He was breathing, but I couldn't wake him up. And the ambulance was here in 2 minutes. And they were all masked up, gowned, and they treated us as COVID patients right away. And they put my husband in the ambulance and told me I couldn't go with them because no one is allowed to go in any hospitals at this point. And I tried to insist that I have to go with him, but they told me if I went with them in an ambulance, I would also be admitted myself. So I thought, okay, let me remain here at home so I could do whatever else is needed for his needs in the hospital. And so he was brought to the hospital. When he got there, they gave him a lot of oxygen and he woke up. So in my mind, he probably had a lot of PCO2 that was kept in his lungs. And then when they bombarded him with oxygen, it woke him up. That was my own assessment at that point. And he remained awake for the next 5 days. He was texting and FaceTiming me and the children and telling me what they were doing for him, oxygen, tests, the labs, the medications. Remember, at this point, nobody knows how to treat COVID-19 yet. We don't know what the protocol is. They were giving him experimental tablets of this kind, this and that, respiratory treatments, but he remains with oxygen, but he was not intubated yet. He was brought to the hospital on a Sunday, and 5 days later, on a Friday, he texted me to say, "They say my oxygen is low, so they will intubate me." And I'm like, oh no. And that was the last I heard of him. See, when somebody is intubated or placed in a respirator, they sedate you. So now he couldn't text us or tell us what's going on. They were keeping him sedated or asleep so they can manipulate, the settings of the respirator. And that's the last communication I had with him, and I relayed this to the rest of the children. He stayed in the hospital, and in the next few days, I was communicating with the doctors and the nurses. The lucky part, I believe, was because he was admitted to the hospital where I worked. So everybody knew me, and they knew it was my husband, so I do know that they were taking care of him. The ICU at this time was full, so they admitted him in an OR stretcher bed in one OR. So the overflow from ICU were placed in the OR. At this point, he was already sedated, asleep in one OR. And who was watching him? Friends of mine, my anesthesiologist friends, my OR nurse friends. So I was comforted by the feeling that he was being taken care of by friends. And they wouldn't, they were gonna make sure that he's well taken care of. So day after day, everybody would update me with what's going on, what's his oxygen saturation, what medications is on. They started to put him on medications, but they couldn't take him off the bench yet. He wasn't ready. Second week, and I was very hopeful, and I said, okay, try something. Try proning him, which they started to do with patients in the hospital. They would prone patient to give enough space for the lungs to expand and given medications. They were also trying to give plasma infusions as they heard this was effective. And we were trying to get him plasma, but it took a while for the Red Cross to provide the plasma. They were trying to give him experimental medications. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I know it was used widely as reported on TV in many other states. So we were now on the second week and they still could not extubate him, and they were going up on his medication doses, and I was beginning to get nervous. Being a critical care nurse, I know what that meant. When it reached the third week, I was starting to get very nervous and very anxious that I demanded to be updated every hour by the doctors, by the nurses, and I was lucky enough that these people were updating me. And I was requesting them also to please ask the priest in our hospital to bless him, bless all the sick people so that they would all get well and go home. So that's what happened. And then my friend who was the nurse manager in PACU, who took after my position, was giving me reports and was FaceTiming when he would go to ICU and update us with his condition. However, the next week on a Sunday, I was also picked up by the ambulance because I also got sick. So I probably got it from my husband. He probably got it at work, who knows, because it was airborne. It was all over the place. He was still going to work, so he must have gotten it from the post office. And since we lived together and at close proximity with each other every day, I must have gotten it from him. So I got ill also, but then my symptoms were less. My symptoms were more of GI symptoms, while his was mostly respiratory. On their third week, they still could not extubate him. And PNA America started to pray for us. They started to hear of sick nurses or nurses who started to die. And I know some of them. I know many of them. And it started to make me anxious. And I started to fear for all of us. Like, are we all gonna die at this point? The nurses who knew me in the hospital were very comfortable talking to me, and they would tell me, Madelyn, the next patient to you died last night, and the patient to your right died the other day. So in my mind, I'm next. So they were very comfortable talking to me about updating me with other patients that they didn't know that they were also scaring me instead of updating me. But because of the power of prayers, and I do believe this, novena was said on our behalf by the Philippine Nurses Association of America. So each chapter all across America were praying for us. And I could feel them lifting us up. It was Holy Week when I was very sick, and on a Good Friday, I felt lifted up. I felt physically lifted up. And I was participating in these rosaries, and I told them. The next day I saw a rainbow in my window, and I told myself, I'm gonna live. I am gonna live. So the next day I was discharged, but I was still infectious. I stayed home. None of my children could visit me or come near me because they will be infected too. So the house was where I was quarantined. by myself. I have so many friends among the many nurses all across New Jersey that every morning there was food outside my door. Everybody brought me food, comfort food, religious articles. They were praying for me, and I was very grateful for that. It lifted my spirits. I felt so alone, but not really alone, because I do know that people were praying for me. On the third week, my husband died. He did not survive. They couldn't extubate him, and the medications that were giving them were already what we call, they were maxed. The ventilator settings were maxed, and I do know as a nurse, there's really nothing that you could really up or make greater at this point, that every effort would be futile at this time. So I relied on the fact that maybe my husband is not coming back anymore. So when the hospital said, "Can you come to the hospital?" I felt so grateful. Only because I was an employee of the hospital, they allowed me to come and hold his hands for the last 3 hours of his life. So that was a great, great privilege, because nobody could come to the hospital at this time. And I was there with his last heartbeat, but I was able to say goodbye. So the month that followed was quite difficult, because the children could not come near me. We prayed every day. I believe I prayed every minute. I became very nervous, very anxious of everything. And now the love of my life is gone. The father of my children. We were married 42 years and been together before that since we were students. So he was part of my life, majority of my life, and he was gone. So how does anyone recover from that? As a nurse, I know the stages of grief. Yes, there's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I was in denial that he was gone. I was angry because he was taken away from me. We had so many plans for the future. We were gonna be going to every part of the world. Maybe every 3 months we will tour some other beautiful place, because we worked so hard all our lives that maybe this is time now to enjoy the fruits of our labor. It took me a lot to be in this stage of denial and anger. The children could not come near me. I tried to follow what it is. Do you really have the stages of grief, and what do you do to overcome it? So because I was a nurse, I learned many things that could help the body and hopefully the soul to recover. I made sure I had routines that I observed. Get your body moving. Get out into the sunlight. So I would go to my backyard and walk. Or I would walk around the block making sure I had my mask on so I don't infect anybody I met. I would get sunshine, I would do the daily routines, and then I would just take time out to release the stress. I was trying to practice meditation, some yoga poses that I learned in the past. I tried to reduce caffeine if I could, but it didn't help. And then I tried to turn on those tunes. I tried to put on the music to help elevate the mood, meditate, and again, friends were very important. But then as a Philippine Nurses Association of America, I know that my role was just not for me. I had to also make sure that the members are taken care of. You see, at this point, we had about 5,000 members, and my experience is not the only one. I've heard of nurses dying. I've heard of nurses spouse dying. I've heard of father and son dying. I've known 10 people in my town dying. So what I did, as any nurse would do, is help someone in need. I tried to help people to deflect the focus on myself because I really didn't want to go to that dark place. I prayed a lot. I prayed in the morning, noon, and night. I had to tell God to help me at this point. But helping someone made me braver at this point. So I tried to see what's going on in the West, what's going on in California, what's going on in Florida, who's affected in New York, who's affected in Alabama, and all the things. And I was always trying to keep in touch with the children, and that helped get my sanity. So the stages of grief for me took a long time, because at this point, no burials were happening. My husband's body was still in the hospital. And it was recommended that people who had this illness were cremated so they are not going to be sources of any infection to anyone else. When he was alive, it was acceptable to him to be cremated. He said that's only the earthly body, your spirit will go to heaven. So he was okay with cremation, and that's what we planned to do, which we did, and waited for the children to come and bury him in November. So at this point, I was trying to go through the stages of grief, and I know what they are because we studied them in nursing. So I hope to go through it unscathed, but that's not really the truth. It's so personal when it happens to you. I tried not to go into depression because then I wouldn't be of any help to anybody. And at this point, I was still the president of PNAA, and I still had a lot of things to do to endorse to the new group. Will I ever reach the end stage of grief, which is acceptance? I was hoping for that. Living for others was my mantra, and it's a rule of nature. Life is good when you're happy, but much better when others are happy because of you. So I tried to live by that as much as I could so I could forget my own sorrow. Adversity makes you stronger, and I think it made me stronger also. Although it gave me some nervousness which wasn't present before. I went through the stages of grief, and I'm still at it, I believe. I don't think anyone will ever get over it. It stays with you because this is somebody that's been part of most of my life. When you can change the direction of the wind, adjust your sails. And I tried to focus on others rather than on myself. That way I won't be so sad. So I focused on the nurses. I focused on their families. I focused on what's going on. And COVID was still raging in America and destroying many families and taking away a lot of my friends and people that I know. So what do you do, really? Arm the nurses with knowledge of how to prevent it, how to recover. And as a prayerful people, Filipinos are known to be prayerful people. We prayed all the time, and it helped. It truly spiritually helped. My support system at work, I had my 4 children, their spouses, and I had 4 beautiful little grandchildren. The church was closed because they were also observing COVID, and I resorted to the Mass that I found in my phone. So I did daily masses at home. I would sit and hold the Mass and include my husband's picture in it, and I prayed with him. Hopefully I prayed with him on a daily basis, and I prayed the rosary at night, and it seemed to calm me down. The community was very helpful. My fellow nurses were giving me the essentials of life, food, support, help, prayers, anything I need, errands. And the organization of the Philippine nurses in New Jersey and in America were very helpful at this time. Daily prayers helped me a lot. So I would do daily Mass at home, and I would pray the rosary at night, and it helped to calm me down. But there's always this anxiety within me that has not left me. I was a very self-assured person before this happened, but I found that I've been so nervous, and I was unsure of myself, and I didn't know how I would be relating to the world now that my husband is gone. So I believe I'm still grieving. I don't know what stages, because I would really love to go into that last stage of acceptance already. But of course, as a big, huge part of my life. It's not easy to forget, and I don't want to forget. It's how you adjust after the death. So I focused a lot on my grandchildren, babysitting. The little ones help me on a daily basis. My new life now is grandma, babysitting the grandkid, and reaching out to the other survivors. What do they need? Prayers? Is it food? Is it a little money to tide them over? And my children were even asking me, Mommy, are you going to stay in the same house? Are you going to give up the house and move somewhere, maybe to one of them? But in my mind, this is the house where I shared with my husband. His memories are here. And this is where the children grew up. So I'd rather that I stay here and enjoy the comfort of my own home. And I know they have their own families now. So let me be that doting grandma when I have time to dote for the little ones, but be my own self in my own home as a retiree. And I try to focus myself with things that would be very productive. Again, helping the other nurses. I was already a past president of the Philippine Nurses Association at this time, and I'm in charge now of the NOMELEC, the elections of the new officers. And right now in 2022, I'm in charge of a committee that would be helpful in the global affairs. So I'd like to be as productive as I could, and at the same time focus on my children and the grandchildren. And it looks like COVID in 2022 is starting to dissipate and has lesser impact on people. Not too many people die of COVID anymore. I believe the immunizations have started to take hold, and the symptoms are more manageable at this point. And hopefully it's just one of those things that would go away soon and not devastate families as they have devastated mine. Side effects of COVID have not really left me. I get nervous, and I'm not a nervous person. I get anxious, and I'm not an anxious person. I was so self-assured before all of this happened. Gone are the nights when I would turn the lights off. My lights are on all night. So that's what COVID did to me. I'm a nervous person. I try to overcome that. I do a lot of prayers, because prayers at this point help me a lot, and the love of family and friends, of course, help me a lot, and that's very important in my life.
I am Susan Castor. I'm a registered nurse for 44 years, and I live here in New Jersey with my husband, Jerry Castor. He is a retired RN, and I also live with my friend, almost like sister, Marley Nicholas, and she works as an assistant vice president of the nursing care services at Community Medical Center. And I am also working at Community Medical Center as the administrative director of the transitional care unit. I have 2 kids. Both of them are living in Las Vegas. My son is Jet Castor. He is an occupational therapist, married to Kathy, and they have a son, Julian. And then my daughter is Jenna Castor, and she is still single. I arrived here in United States on August 31st, 1988. Before coming here in United States, I worked in Kuwait for 3 years, 2 years in Saudi Arabia, and that's when it's all started, because I didn't have any dream of coming to United States. I just wanted to finish my contract and go home and be with my family, especially my son. What encouraged me to come here are my coworkers, because they were singles and they wanted to all come here in the United States. So they did take the exam, CGFNS, and they actually encouraged me to have a review with them, though I didn't want to take the test. To make the story short, I took the test, passed the test, and I came here. Pre-COVID, we live a simple life. We are simple people. Just the same, I like cooking, I like gardening, I do exercise a little bit, but I love eating. Pretty much before COVID, I'm very much involved with the organization of Philippine Nurses Association of America, New Jersey, and the local chapter, which is Ocean County Subchapter. Then COVID hits early stage or early months of COVID-19. The healthcare situation is very stressful. It's in chaos, even here, at home. It's very much like there are changes of all our daily routine. When COVID hits, I guess we were not expecting it. Nobody expected that it will become pandemic. There were protocols that we needed to follow. We did follow the guidelines of CDC, although there are a lot of challenges just because of not enough supply to maintain following all these regulations. The first time we were using regular face masks, and there are daily constant changes. It's really constant change because, again, although we need to follow the CDC guidelines, we have a lot of challenges and barriers of using those PPE because there's not enough supply. We need to reuse or repeat using our face masks, and then continuously there's a change in whatever practices we have. So instead of just using the regular face mask, we have to use the N95, we have to use a face shield, we have to use, regularly we use the gloves, but then again, the frequent hand washing, we emphasize on that. We actually started the 6 feet social distancing, and pretty much we practice cleaning and disinfecting our surfaces, everything, and the equipments at the hospital. And the same thing at home during that time. When COVID hits early, I was one of the people who got infected with COVID. During that time, it was a scary feeling to have contacted COVID because there's lack of knowledge about what care, how do you protect yourself, what treatment. When I had COVID, I was on disbelief. I was on a denial stage. How can it be? I have a lot of questions. Why did I get it? How did I get it? I just can't understand. Mainly because when our staff, our patients are getting infected and every day the number increases, it was scary at the time. But the one day that I came home, my daughter still lives with us and she's working in one of those rehab facilities. She actually told me, "Mom, I don't feel good." She was having a headache at the time. She was not pretty energetic. There was body aches, and she started having a low-grade fever and sore throat. At that time, I was not really that worried just because once we were doing, isolation at work, we felt so fortunate or lucky because all of us are like working in a healthcare environment. So whatever protocols and safety measures we're doing at the hospital, we implemented it at home. We started just because I have 4 rooms at home, so each one of us is like occupying a single room. So when she felt that way, she was quarantined, and then the following day, just because I know I'm also exposed, probably not knowing, but I didn't have any symptoms. So we went to have ourselves tested. And after 2 days getting the result, I was really in shock to know that my daughter was negative, tested negative, and I tested positive without having the symptoms that she had. The only thing that I had during that time, I lost my sense of smell and I lost my sense of taste. But then at that time when I started losing that, I knew that something is not right. Because even if that's not a typical symptoms of COVID during that time, my coworker who I shared office with, she lost her sense of smell and sense of taste, and after 2 days she tested positive. So then I knew. At the time, I was very, very sad, and I started quarantining myself because I was so afraid at the time what will happen to me, because we don't know. Oh, everything that I know, I see at the hospital, they are very, very sick. Some people are dying, and then the staff are getting sick. Everybody's so afraid. So at that time, I was really afraid, anxious. I have a lot of fear. What if I infect my family members? What if? There's a lot of what ifs during that time. I started to do some different practices aside from, hand washing, aside from cleaning all the surfaces and all our equipment. So we started, when we were at work, I started to implement, we have a shower room for my staff to feel comfortable. I actually allow them to take a shower before they go home. They bring a clean set of clothes, so then they will feel safe. And then here at home, we made sure that our shoes are left outside. We made sure that we have bags available, so then we needed to change our clothes here and then just go to shower. And that's how we felt that we're doing the right thing when we are home. When I was sick, we're doing the same thing. We do the laundry separately. They put aside my laundry. They don't include mine in their laundry. I eat by myself. What happened at that time, it's lonely. I feel alone, because even if we are all working in healthcare, sometimes you feel very sensitive. Like if somebody will say, "Oh, Mom, you're not wearing your mask." You feel like, oh my God, they feel like I am infectious and they're afraid of me. That's a feeling that I didn't want to remember, because it's so sad. It's really sad because I feel alone at that time. After 5 days, since I didn't really have a lot of those symptoms of being COVID positive, I came back to work, because they don't really have to test us, just because you will be testing positive for 90 days. That's what CDC was saying before. But there is a protocol that if you don't have any symptoms anymore, maybe during that time it's 7 days to 10 days, and you can go back to work. So I'm very fortunate, because I still didn't have that sense of smell and taste. I came back to work. I was so scared. At the same time, I was happy, just because I really miss a lot of those people that I've worked with. I miss that I'm going around in the hospital, but at the same time, scared that I might get it again. So I'm very, very cautious, extra cautious of the things that I needed to do or where I needed to go. When I still was isolated at home, you felt alone, but at the same time, I went through a grieving process. And again, just like what I said, at first I was on denial, disbelief, and then asking many questions, why me? And then to me, because I pray, I do meditation, I read books, and then I told myself, I need to get out of this stressful situation. I needed to be able to accept the fact that I don't have anything, everything that's happening at the time is beyond my control. So I need to get out of that stress situation and just think positive, because I'm a very positive person. How would I be able to help other people that's really relying on me, my family, my co-workers, my staff? So at the time, you know what I did? Whenever my families are gone, I go out. I walk at least a minimum of 2 miles. I started playing music. I enjoyed Zumba. I started doing Zumba even for 20 minutes. And pretty much I felt that, okay, this is the right thing to do. During that time, also what actually made me go back right away and recover right away is the families and my friends who keep on calling me. I didn't have to cook. My extended family, we call them recruits because we recruited them in the Philippines. They were cooking for me and they're just leaving it at the door. I got cards, I got plants, And even the parents of my daughter's friends, I cannot believe and I cannot thank them enough because they were sending us goodies, food, and fruits. It's a non-stop. So I feel like I'm well loved, and I think that leads the pathway to my early recovery and thinking positive again. I truly could not thank them enough for helping me go through that phase of being emotionally drained, physically drained, and go back to being positive in life. There was a lot of support coming everywhere. At work, I learned how to text. My coworkers are like texting me, emailing me. The community, oh my God, they were so generous to all the staff, everybody, just like what I said before. Originally, they were so afraid of you. If they know that you are a nurse or working in a hospital, they are afraid of you. But you know what? After a while, they were so generous. A lot of establishment sent us food, to all the staff, and it's like the feeling of being okay, we're not alone. They were like fire department who are doing parades, and there were students in their cars with their parents honing the horn and then saying thank you, and they're sending us cards and pictures. Awesome feeling and support from our community. We love that, and up to this time we will never ever forget how grateful we are for them acknowledging how the frontliners are like really serving everyone in spite of the danger of being infected by COVID. If I have to say another thing, the other support that we got is coming from the Philippine Nurses Association of America. We are on a standstill at that time during the early stage of COVID, but what they did try to do, we cannot meet face to face, but we have this virtual meeting. And even PNA and J, they called people like resources, psychologists, any leaders to talk about what we're going through, what we feel, how we feel, and somebody to just release all those negative emotion. And I still remember the first time I ever attended, as in we are rejoicing. This is the first time. We actually dress up just like we're going to a conference. We even put makeup, we even put a perfume, as in this is normal, as in for 2 hours let's just forget that there is COVID. I felt so good, and then the speakers, oh my God, what a wonderful feeling for us to be able to express how we felt, like especially me, I got COVID, but more so to those other co-workers and other people who actually had family members and friends who had COVID and they passed away. The loneliness that they're feeling and sharing, I can't tell you enough. I was really grateful in a way that I didn't go through that, but I felt so sad for them because they are very close to us, and it's so hard to know that once you're enjoying each other company and they are gone. It's really sad, but again, right now we go like move on with whatever happened and try to get something positive from what happened. After they find out the new protocols, what do we need to do? What are the treatments? How can we protect ourselves? We had the vaccination available. It's a beginning of feeling like a little bit of assurance that the pandemic will probably slow down. To me, pre-COVID, I have a simple life. After COVID, I learned what's really important in life. I learned that material things will not make you happy. It's your relationship with your families, your relationship with your friends and your co-workers, and most especially, being a nurse, I take pride on taking care of patients, but I just realized we need to be able to take care of ourselves too. Before I can take care of somebody else, I really need to take care of myself. So there was a change after COVID. I am more resilient. I know that my coworkers, I love that they witness how I recover quickly and able to go back to work and stay positive for them. So I was thinking about them, how when you're a manager, you have to think of those people who reports to you, they turn to be positive also. I know how scared they are. So after that, I tried to tell my story. I share my story to my staff. I told them what I did. We exchanged texts, and still it's gonna be okay. I need to assure them that things will be okay. We shared what things we needed to do, like drinking warm water with lemon in the morning, like taking vitamin C, zinc, and then you need to gargle before you go to bed, and you need to exercise. And of course, everybody, I'm sure, were praying at that time. I found that even if I'm old, I was able to develop my technology skills because I hate computer, I hate technology, but I learned how to do a distribution list because I didn't want to text my staff. I always want to have a personal conversation with them, a face-to-face meeting. But because of COVID, I learned how to adjust social information changing of communication. I learned that, and I would have to say that I have a better life-work balance this time. I made sure that my priority is about my health. I learned that I have to make sure that I do not commit too much of my time somewhere else. I learned how to say no. I cannot overextend myself anymore just because I know what's important. I need to be able to spend more time with my family, even if it's only just through FaceTime, but I enjoyed it. I take more pictures, I take short vacation. I made sure that my staff will take their vacation. I force them to take vacation just because I want them to feel that life is not all about work. You need to be able to take care of yourself first, to be able to provide an excellent service to our patients and to your families. So I pretty much, with COVID, things changed. I don't really go to a lot of parties anymore. I try to avoid a lot of crowds. And now, everywhere I go, I have my mask, so I'm not comfortable being in a crowd, going to supermarket without wearing a mask, even if they say you don't have to, but I still do. I always make sure that we wash our hands. I'm pretty much happy that going to work, when I observe my staff, they're doing the same thing. So much happiness and gratitude to my staff, just because you know what, we are all like, now I can say that we're back to normal, and for them to tell me, Mom Sue, you need to go home, it's time for you to go home. Oh, thank you because I know they're taking care of me. They give back what I give to them. So honestly, COVID came. COVID is not gone yet, but life moves on. I am moving to the right direction. I'm looking forward of my retirement next year. I hope that you like my story, and thank you so very much.